You know, I've had a thought for quite a while here. I'm Brian Coates, by the way, pastor at Central Christian Church. Some videos that I like to watch throughout the week, sometimes when I have time, I like to watch film studies of football. Football is actually a really complicated game. There's so much going on. There's so much involved. There's so much you don't notice when you're watching a game on TV because you're usually watching the ball. So I like to watch the All-22s later. I like to follow people on Twitter and other places who break down All-22s. So my thought was, what would it be like to break down a sermon, to do a film study of a sermon, sort of in the same vein or spirit to breaking down a football game, to doing some film study of football. Of course, this is born of a few thoughts. Thought number one is, and I've thought about this for a long time too, after now preaching for well over 15 years at several different churches, it occurs to me that sermons, it's okay if sermons are fun. Sermons every now and then ought to be fun, ought to elicit some joy, because joy is one of the fruits of the Spirit. So that's one of my guiding principles here. Another guiding principle that I think you'll see as we do the film study is that both content and delivery are important when giving a sermon. I think a lot of pastors and preachers pay attention to content, as they should, as I do too. But if you aren't working on your delivery, your content may not matter. And then finally, I've thought for a long time about, well, should I do a podcast like every other pastor in the universe is doing, really, as every other person in the universe is doing, it would seem, or should I do something else? I don't know what this is. I'm trying to keep it short because I know y'all like short. But I thought every so often, I'm going to take one of my sermons and do a little film study. So here's the one from last Sunday. It's part of a series called More Names of Jesus. This particular one is the Great High Priest from Hebrews 4:14 through 16. A couple clips to show you. First clip is in that content versus delivery thing, or content and delivery. I want to show you, what am I doing here?
But I am wondering,
you see me putting my hand on my head?
Priest talk this morning. If it doesn't feel,
what am I doing there? What am I doing there? Yes, I'm bald. But I think sometimes maybe I shouldn't call too much attention to that, because look, just a few seconds later,
but mainly found in the Hebrew scriptures, I'm wondering if this whole idea, this whole concept of the priesthood, if it doesn't feel distant, abstract, foreign, even to some extent.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not even sure I really had an itch, but I got to work on that a little bit. All right, so clip number 2 in our film study of last week's sermon is a point I was trying to make about how sometimes we are rejected or we are denied. There's barriers, and one of the great truths about Jesus being the great high priest is that the barrier between us and God, because of Jesus' sacrifice, is not there. We have access to God. So that should be good news to people who have encountered barriers, who have encountered rejection, because Jesus, by his death and by his sacrifice, ensures that we can come, we can approach God. Listen to what I said about that.
If I were to invite this entire room, to stand up, okay? So you're not really doing it, but this mental exercise, you're doing it. Everyone in the room is standing up. And then I said to that room full of people standing up, if you've ever not been invited to a party that you wish you had been invited to, and people that are friends or in your social networks were invited, but you weren't, please sit down. think a few people would sit down. Or if I said, gosh, what could be some other examples? Let's say you applied for a job and you really thought you were qualified and you thought you were a perfect fit, but you didn't get the job. Sit down. If I asked if you've ever been cut from a sports team, sit down. If you've ever been left out of group plans, sit down. Do you think, like I am thinking, there would really be anyone in the room still standing?
So after I did that, I attempted to make the point that this is such good news for all of us. That if there is anyone that's felt denied or rejected or had walls or boundaries put in front of you, that Jesus is the great high priest means there are no boundaries, there are no divisions, there are no walls between us and God. And I tried to make that, personal by telling a personal story, but also hopefully people could relate to that too. One thing I didn't say that I think, again, I thought of later, what does it also say? That here's someone who encountered rejection and denial, felt left out. What does it say that I can think of instances and occurrences and times in my life where I've probably been on the giving end of that too, where I should have included someone, where I should have made someone feel welcome and not rejected. So when Hebrews says that Jesus' offering and Jesus' sacrifice is like a offering or sacrifice that the Old Testament priest gave, and that their offering made atonement and covered over the sins of the people, my sins need to be covered for as well. It's a really powerful passage of scripture, Hebrews 4:14 through 16. I invite you to reread it if you haven't. Again, I think I'm going to do this every so often. Maybe it's a way to check in on the message from the previous week and to do it in a way that is, a little bit different. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.